It's Mock Draft Monday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll do that. We have Alan Saunders, and we're talking about the Steelers' new linebacker coach, Aaron Curry, right on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting platform, but especially on YouTube. Like this video. If you see this on YouTube, subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of being an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? If so, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps, all one word, in the game. All right, as I said, we have Alan Saunders here back on the show. Alan, good to have you as always. And for all those who've been waiting, this is the return. It's the time of the year. I said we give it a week after the Super Bowl. Now it's cool. It is officially Mock Draft Monday season here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, I don't know about you. I wake up every morning. Some people get coffee. I get mock drafts, baby. I love to see what everyone just thinks about stuff that we're never going to care about once the draft is over.
I like draft season, man. It's good. I think I like it because I've covered college football for a long time, and so I know a lot of the players. And then it's fascinating to me to see how they turn out as pros, and I don't know, it's fun. I like it. I always have liked it.
I feel you, and like it is exciting because I've been covering college football to see guys that are playing across the country, and I'm like, man, where's this guy going to go? Where's that guy going to go? It's always interesting, and then also to hear because there are completely different opinions everywhere of every prospect. There's guys who think that some day two guys or day one guys or day three guys. There's all sorts of opinions of who's the risers, the fallers. It's going to be very interesting. Now, the combine's still in some time. That comes at the end of the month. We'll get there when we get there. But when we do here on Mock Draft Monday, I said on Friday during the show, I said you can post it either under the post that I make on Twitter or the post that I make in the Locked On Steelers Facebook group. We do have a winner. That will be the third segment of the show. So stick around to see if you won Mock Draft Monday. But with Mock Draft Monday, I also reveal my mocks. And the theme with this mock is just the first 1.0 7-round mock that I just did. I used the PFF simulator, the Pro Football Focus simulator, just as like a user-friendly one that helps me get through it. I picked who I thought were the most valuable players at those positions that best fit what the Steelers needed. So with that being said, Alan's going to go with me through these picks right here that I have before you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see who I picked. I will walk you through it if you're listening on one of our audio platforms. But let's go with our Mock Draft Monday. Now, I will say PFF gave me an A- on my draft overall, so they must think I'm a genius. But in my draft, first round, Christian Gonzalez fell to 17. I don't know if that's ever going to actually happen because he's pretty doggone good, but I was like, yeah, okay, I'll just take the guy I think is the best cornerback in this draft class. But Alan, I went with Christian Gonzalez here because cornerback, I think that it would be great if they could get their prime corner of the future. He was the first guy I went with here. If Christian Gonzalez falls to the Steelers in the first round, is this a run to the podium type of deal, or are you kind of cautious? Are there other guys that you'd still be looking around for? Like, no. Let's see the field here.
I mean, I think he's pretty close to like the best case scenario for them in the first round. I'm not sure that like he's a run to the podium guy for them, but I don't know. I think they'd be very happy about Paris Johnson being there or Peter Skoronski, offensive tackles, I think. But there are not a lot of guys that I think are pretty obvious picks for them at that spot, and I think he's one of them. We'll probably talk about this, but I think it'll be a very attractive spot for them to trade down from 17. I think a guy like Christian Gonzalez being there would be one of the biggest. Like, nope, not trading that.
Can't do it. I feel you on that. let's go through the rest of the picks here. My next pick, because I do think they need to go offensive line. I went offensive line for my second and both my second round picks when I was using them for the Steelers at 32. And this was no trades. I was just keeping it basic. This is just our first one. We're going to do a lot of these as we get closer to the draft. But my second pick was O'Cyrus Torrence, the guard out of Florida. I really like him. I think that he's even the best interior offensive lineman that'll come in this draft class. I don't think they should take him at 17. Some people mock him there. But if he's sitting there at 32, I think that'd be good value pending on who else would be there. My next pick at 49th overall, also a second-round pick, Matthew Bergeron, had a really good Senior Bowl, Syracuse offensive tackle. There's your guard and your tackle that you can go and send in and say, hey, Kevin Dotson, Dan Moore Jr., you want jobs? Beat those guys. That's kind of the standard you set there. Then in the third round, with the last of my day 2 picks, I got DeMarvion Overshown. And I do think the Steelers need a linebacker, and they need an athletic linebacker. I want to see Overshown's testing numbers. I want to see how explosive he measures out. But when I watch some of the plays he makes, I love the ways he moves around. I think that if he can grow with the Steelers and they keep Myles Jack as a veteran and they can kind of cultivate him, I think with his explosiveness, he could become a very useful utility linebacker for them. Then rounding things out, 4th round pick, Kyu Blu Kelly, another corner. I know I'm doubling up here at corner, Alan, but I think this is the draft class to do it. I think in the coming years, if they pay Cam Sutton like I think they will, they'll want to have some corners on their roster that they can trust without having to pay them too much free agent money. That won't come this year, but I think in the years after, not having to pay for more veterans, if they can have 2 corners that they trust on rookie contracts, that'll be a good boost. And then for round 7, I like Brandon Hill as an athlete for Pitt. I think he's a good change. He could be a good special teamer for a year or two. And if he develops into a safety, bonus points. And then I went for Dante Still as a defensive lineman who gave Pitt fits in the backyard brawl back to start the season. I figured, defensive line, that was the one group that I think that they should address that I didn't address. So that's where I went there. Alan, give me your thoughts on some of the players that I was talking about there as far as how they fit with the Steelers.
Really love the 2 offensive linemen in the second round there. O'Cyrus Torrence is a guy at the Senior Bowl, was very impressive. He's super strong, a great first step for a guard, whether that's back in pass protection or trying to get to the second level and get his hands on a linebacker. Not necessarily like a kind of guy you want in space, just because he's gigantic.
He's big,
but he really reminds me of like a lot of the Steelers offensive linemen of the past, right? Like a guy like Ramon Foster or a Marquise Pouncey, super tough, big, strong, like just a stalwart kind of guy. I'm not sure he's like an all-pro, which is generally like what I think you want to take a guard in the first round. To me, like if you're not an all-pro guard, you're probably not a first-round pick.
Right.
So I think 32 is a good spot for him. I also think if they end up trading down from 17, they could take him somewhere in the 20s as well, and that would be fair. Okay value. And Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse, just a very impressive guy, smooth. We knew he could run block. I thought he looked really good in the pass rush one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl. Syracuse doesn't throw the ball a ton, so I thought that was big for him. And I think that really does a good job of shoring up that offensive line with those 2 second-round picks. I think those guys would look pretty good next to each other.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And then again, once you start getting past those, you're just filling spots. Again, I just linebacker. I think,
man, that's not filling spots. That guy's exciting.
Yeah, he's exciting.
He's a former safety, so I think he should run well. Now we'll see. Okay, but he started as a safety, but he's built like Micah Parsons and hits like a freight train. Like I don't know, like it's a very enticing combination of physical attributes, and I think that's one of the things that when you look at the way the Steelers draft, Mike Tomlin has said this, is like if you're looking at the draft process, you're looking at attributes. You're looking at how big is he, how fast is he, and not just the physical attributes, but how smart is he? Like, is he coachable? All those things. But he's like, man, like if you're talking about like technical play, like that's my job. Like that, like I'll worry about that. Yeah. Give me bigger, faster, stronger. I'll worry about what they're supposed to be doing. Like there are some plays on tape where Overshown looks like a 3rd-round pick, and there are some plays on tape where he looks like a guy that could be an all-pro. Like I think he's a very exciting prospect and a guy that I think fits what the Steelers needed inside linebacker extremely well. I'm actually like, as far as mocking him to the Steelers, I'm just not sure that they value his coverage ability at the inside linebacker position as much as I think they probably should. This is a team that likes to stop the run, and that's probably not the first thing that he's best at, but man, what a player. A guy I really like. Kyu Blu Kelly is another guy who had an outstanding Senior Bowl, really showed off his physicality. A guy I didn't know that much about. I don't watch a ton of Pac-12 football,
right?
And I was super impressed with him. Probably the guy that I think rose his stock the most in that week in Mobile. I think 4th round is honestly maybe a little late for him right now based on what he was able to show. But man, he can be a good player.
I hear you on that
corner. Like, I mean, it all depends on what happens in free agency, right?
Right,
but
right. It does.
It certainly doesn't seem unrealistic to me.
I feel you on that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about these needs that the Steelers have and the ways that they can fill them. Alan's got some stuff on SteelersNow.com that's going to intrigue you. We'll talk about some of those things in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Now, let me tell you something. Ultimate Pro Football GM is a great game that I play. I have fun with. It gives you the chance to be a GM of a football team. You can build the stadiums that you want, the scouting department. You can hire and fire coaches at will. You can draft players. If you're a draft guru, you could pay a scout to be the ultimate scout, so you have all the draft information, every single class, and then keep rebuilding your team. And seasons can fly by. I finished seasons as fast as 5 minutes just by simulating through the once you're the GM, it's like, hey, you set up your team, you let them run, and then you manage things how they go throughout the season based off of injuries. But it's a really fun game. It's challenging. It's based on real life situations. Players get into trouble, then it challenges you. How are you going to handle it? You're going to favor some players over others. All that stuff plays into how you run your franchise, so you can prove that you're the ultimate pro football GM. I played this game. You played 25 seasons. I won 19 championships. Think you can beat it? Go download Ultimate Football GM right now on your mobile device. You can do that on your device, or you can go to ultimate-gm.com. And if you're a Locked On Steelers listener, you can get a 100% free boost to your franchise by using the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, in the game store. And the game is for free. You can download it on your mobile device, and it's playable offline on the go. So go get Ultimate Football GM in your game store, or go visit ultimate-gm.com to download the game. Ultimate Football GM in the app stores. Start your dynasty today. Taking a break from mock draft season. We're gonna get back to Mock Draft Monday in the final segment. Got to stop to do some news though. The Steelers hire Seahawks defensive assistant Aaron Curry as the linebackers coach. Not much to note about Aaron Curry as a coach. He's a former 4th overall pick in the 2009 NFL draft. Didn't exactly pan out too great for him. He played for a few years for the Seahawks, the Raiders, and the Giants. And then was out of the NFL pretty quickly. He's been working his way up as an assistant. He's been an assistant for the Seahawks since 2019. And now he's coming over to be the Steelers linebackers coach, as reports say from on3.com. And then you guys, of course, reported that as well. Aaron Curry being a linebackers coach, this seems like the potential for Mike Tomlin to get one of the younger coaches on his staff and see if he can grow someone that's young. Because, and you and I have talked about this before, a lot of assistant coaching hires under Mike Tomlin over the years have been older guys who have kind of already been developed in the NFL before becoming, before their time with the Steelers. This is a little bit different thing. This is a guy who, if he works out, and if in 5 to 8 years, he becomes a defensive coordinator for the Steelers, that would be a different guy that they took, cultivated, and made their own. What's your thoughts on the hire of Aaron Curry?
I think he's a guy with some interesting connections to the team and to Pittsburgh. He's from Fayetteville, North Carolina, Jeff Capel's hometown, and he's talked about his relationship with Mike Tomlin, another Carolina guy. But he was he was a coach at Charlotte when both Larry Ogunjobi and Alex Highsmith were with the Charlotte 49ers. And so I think he brings a level of familiarity with the people in the program that he's going to be coaching, and that helps. And then I think he's a guy that's been there and done that. And I think that's one of the things that their coaching staff does not necessarily have a lot of right now. I don't think you need to have a lot of that, but I think it's something that's good to have in the toolbox, right? I think having a guy who's been a recent NFL player is an asset to a coaching staff, and they don't have a lot of those. And so I think he can provide that in general, and specifically, developing Alex Highsmith is a big part of the job of this coaching staff going forward. They need to find out this offseason whether they're going to sign him to a long contract extension or not. And so I assume that Curry's going to work with the outside linebackers. I don't know, but that seems like that's probably how it's going to work out. So yeah, it's not like TJ Watt needs coached. So I assume that that's the big job here. And so we'll see if he's able to be up to it. But I think it's a good hire, and I think it's a guy with some potential.
Certainly, we'll get a lot more into that when we actually start to get more information on Aaron Curry there. But let's dive back into the conversation I wanted to talk to you more about. A lot of people, like you said earlier, are pointing to certain needs that you have to draft certain this position over that position. Are the Steelers in a position this year where if you're looking at this NFL draft class and you're saying offensive line, are they in a position where they have a lot of flexibility to kind of go to different positions, or are they at a spot where it's if they get stuck, if they don't get this position, this one group over here, they're going to be in a lot of trouble next year?
Well, I think this then we were on the final word at WPXI on Sunday night, and one of our questions there was like, should the Steelers draft a wide receiver, right? And I think there's been this thing on Steelers social media where if you suggest that Jordan Addison will look really good on this team, and not just because he played college football with Kenny Pickett, because he feels a big need. Like if you suggest that, you get shot out. No, they need a lineman, they need a tackle, they need a nose tackle and a linebacker. And yes, they need all those things. They need 3 corners, and they need a safety if they don't sign Terrell Edmonds. They have lots of needs, right? And that's a sign of a 9-8 football team. That they have a lot of needs, but those needs don't have to be addressed in any specific order. You can go into a draft thinking, I would really like to get one of these tackles, or really like Broderick Jones or Peter Skoronski, or maybe we really like to get Christian Gonzalez or Joey Porter Jr. or whatever. The draft breaks how the draft breaks. If the Steelers are sitting there at pick 17 or pick 32, and the best player available happens to be a wide receiver, they should probably take him, because they need one. If you look at their wide receiving core compared to the best teams in the AFC, they're not as good. They're not as good as the Bengals. They're not as good as the Bills. They're not as good as the Chiefs. And those are the teams they're competing with. And by the way, their quarterback isn't as good as those teams. Give him some. He needs some more weapons. It is a need. And I don't think the Steelers should feel locked into any position. Certainly not right now. We'll see what happens in free agency, but I don't think they have. When you have so many needs, you are free to take the best of them, whichever the best player you get, pretty much outside of quarterback and running back. Roll with it.
No, I feel you. That's where an important message that I think Steelers fans need to embrace right now is that this is not mid 2010s when you had a really good contender, and if you just fix this position, you could be really great. That's how people felt about linebacker. That's how people felt about cornerback. This is a time when, yes, I think the Steelers can be very competitive next year. I'm not saying they'll be Super Bowl contenders, but I think that they could be a team that gets better than 9-8, and that they can show a lot of growth. But part of getting there is developing more strengths wherever you can get them. And I agree with you. Wide receiver is one of those groups that if they can get another great one, awesome, cool. But I'm at the position where they should be very open-minded. And when we get to see Omar Khan, how does he cook? Because if Omar Khan is there and he's able to orchestrate some master deal, like you were talking about trading down from 17 or maybe even trading down from 32, and you take a step back, you say, you know what? We could get a wide receiver, but we like some of these wide receivers that are going to go in the second round, third round, the fourth round. Let's amass some more picks because we'll get some guys that we know that other people won't pick until there that will fit exactly what we're trying to do. And then if you get, let's say instead of, they have 4 picks in the top 80 because of the extra pick they got from the Bears. If they end up with 5 or 6 picks in the top 80, that gives you the opportunity to have a legendary class with a lot of guys that fill a lot of positions quickly. And if you don't have to hit on all of them, but if you hit on 4 of those 5 or 3 of those 5, and those guys are starting, man, like that kind of stuff energizes a roster and energizes a franchise.
Yeah, I really think, when you're talking about a team that has so many needs, and like, look, you have a 9-8 team. They had some needs at the end of the year. They have a lot for their own free agents and not that much cap space. Like, so they're going to get through free agency with some more holes left. So they're going to have like plug-in needs. And then there's, obviously just a slightly above average team where you'd like to be better at a lot of positions. So you have, those kind of upgrade, like you're talking about with the offensive line. Like Dan Moore's still there. They just want to be better than Dan Moore, right? And so I just think when you have that much, you can't get locked into one position. And I think trading down makes a lot of sense. It lets you try to hit all those spots, right? I mean, there's certainly more. They have 7 draft picks. The 2 of them are in the 7th round. So, whatever. You're not really expecting much from those guys, right? Well, they have 5 picks where you can sort of realistically expect to get a player that might contribute this year. They have way more than 5 positions that they need help at.
Right.
Probably like 9. And so, yeah, trading down. And I also think trading down from 32 is something I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but that'll be a position where the first round is going to end and the second round doesn't start until the whole next day. So if there's a player that gets left out of that first round unexpectedly, or, say there's a quarterback or say there's a top running back or top wide receiver, Omar will have 18 hours to try to convince someone that this is the guy you really need and you should overpay to come get him to make sure nobody else comes up to get him at the first pick in the second round. That's a very interesting position to be in if you're thinking about trading down.
Exactly. And that's where I'm at, is that they need to be open-minded to these type of things, And, and I think the really cool thing is no one knows Omar Khan. That there's no, you can guess if he's going to have, if he's going to follow Kevin Colbert's ways, but he can catch people off guard. We can see him. I thought he did a very good job with the Chase Claypool trade. We'll get to see if he follows through with some other opportunities that he'll have coming up this offseason. So lots to stay tuned there. We still have to do our winner for Mock Draft Monday. Stay tuned. I'll announce our winner. You'll get my thoughts and Alan's thoughts on the picks from our winner here on Mock Draft Monday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to this other mock draft here. Now,
I'm ready to rip it to shreds. No, I don't know. So I'm ready to rip it to shreds. No,
there you go. So again, this was kind of there weren't any directives. One thing we will do throughout the year, I'll give like homework assignments, like, hey, focus on this position group. If you don't focus on this position group, I'm not gonna read. Like, this is each mock draft that we do as the year goes on. But this was the first one. So this was however it came. We'll do trades and stuff later. However it came, we were just gonna look at the ones. And doesn't mean that it was all like the best or anything, but this was one that I thought identified some key things that we could talk about here on our first one. So our first winner of 2023's Mock Draft Monday is our man Ryan Kerr. He sent in some picks, and this was an interesting one. His first overall pick for the Steelers, 17th, Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle at Ohio State. A lot of people have him pegged as the best offensive tackle of this class. That would be, I think, an amazing pick. He went just like me and got Osiris Torrance with the 32nd overall pick. Then he went after Siaki Ika, the defensive tackle who's more like a nose tackle for Baylor. He just eats up blockers in the middle. And then he went Kelly Ringo, the Georgia cornerback, in the 3rd round with the 80th overall pick. Just looking at those top 4 picks there, Alan, would you be happy, or would you think the Steelers should be happy with that kind of a haul with picks 17 through 80?
Yes. That's, I mean, can they do better? Maybe, but I mean, that's pretty good. I think Paris Johnson is another one of those kind of run to the podium guys for them in the first round. I can't really see them passing up the opportunity to draft a guy like that. I think there's some questions about whether he's a left tackle or right tackle in the NFL. He's certainly a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, but he's just a gigantic guy that's a really, really good athlete for his size, and I think most coaches feel like they can work with that. We talked about Osiris Torrance. Siaki Ika is interesting because he is really a true nose tackle, unlike the Steelers have had in quite some time. I really can't see him playing outside of the guard. You know, like that's really as far as he's going to go. It's very I've seen him mocked all over the place. I've seen him in the first round. They get him here at 49. I can't say that's unreasonable because there's only so many that need like that. But if one of them really needs one, he could go much higher than this. But I think he's a very good player and definitely fits a big need for the Steelers. Keely Ringo is a corner that also, like earlier in the draft process, I saw mocked a lot higher than this. So, I mean, I think kind of unlikely to be there in the third round, but a very good, very physical, very Steelers-like corner that absolutely – I mean, those 4 picks would be really, really, really good.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. And he finishes out with KJ Henry out of Clemson in the 4th round, 7th round picks, Ryan Greenhagen, Fordham linebacker, and cornerback Alex Austin from Oregon State. But the big thing there to focus on was the Paris Johnson and the Osiris Torrance element. Man, we talk about offensive line a lot this offseason and all this season, even leading into the season. Before last offseason we did. If they could fix the offensive line, like if they hit with a very good guard and a very good tackle, they could flip themselves from being a meh offensive line that they finished with last year to being that crew can wreck people if you're not careful. I thought James Daniels showed really good growth. I think Mason Cole is a solid center. Chooks, I think, could be better, but I think that he's okay for where he is on the Steelers offensive line. And then it also is the question, what do you do if Paris Johnson is more of a right tackle? Do you move Chooks over to left? How do you play that out? But all in all,
I've been trying to move to left tackle for 3 years, so you're not.
You and I both.
You're not breaking any ground for me.
I don't understand. Like that's one thing that I've just thought for years. Like, why is he still at right tackle when he's clearly more passive? He's better at pass blocking than he is at run blocking. But okay, I'm not the coach. I'm not the GM. But that would be interesting. But again, you address that there, and then we've been talking about trenches. Siaki Ika. The thing that I like about him when I watch his Baylor tape is that you don't move him much. Like, the best, the best that you hope is that you turn his shoulder like in a direction and the running back sneaks by. But like, he's a guy that if he gets his hands on you, you're moving backwards. And that's where, again, I think if the Steelers are trying to be a team that wins the trenches more often, a guy like that, yes, he may only be good for 2 downs. You might have to bring him off on 3rd down if he's not able to get after the passer. But I think that the Steelers would welcome being able to train him to get good at that if he's stuffing the run and a really good guy that lines up next to Cam Hayward.
I think it's very interesting about talking about the Steelers and nose tackle, and I kind of touched on it at linebacker too, how like the Steelers are a team that's still very focused on stopping the run. And while it's kind of easy to mock that thought because of how pass-oriented most of the NFL is, when you look at the Steelers division, it's not, right? I mean, the Browns run the ball more than anybody. The Ravens have run the ball a ton. Now, who knows what's going to happen with their quarterback situation and a new offensive coordinator, if that'll still be the case. They got the Titans on the schedule this year. They run the ball. Like, the Steelers need to be able to stop the run. And, I think it's been pretty clear that they don't have the horses to do that. Especially, and look, Cam's not getting any younger. So I think that's a position where they need an injection of talent and size. And I think Ika would be a fantastic fit for them. I think my only criticism of this mock draft, since I said I was going to rip it to shreds, is that I think the odds of those first 4 picks all being available when the Steelers pick is quite low. I think he found a way to get a lucky run through PFF there, but that's a pretty solid draft.
No, I hear you. I'm right with you because very rarely do things play out the way that we expect them to, or that we hope that to. Like we'll be sitting here, and who knows? Maybe these guys will get here because there'll be players that we are like, wait, that guy went where? Like, I didn't think Devin Bush would fall to the point that he did when the Steelers traded up to get him years ago. Because the Raiders took, who was that defensive lineman they took that I was like, I forget his name now. But like the Raiders took a guy that I was like, well, didn't have him in the lineup there. And it happens every year. There's a position that goes on a run because someone else picks a player and another team's like, oh, we need that position and we can't miss out on the top 3 guys, so we got to make a move. Things get crazy on draft day. So that's what
seen based on the combine as well. Like Keely Ringo, if he runs a 4.65, then the Steelers would get laughed at for drafting him at 80, and if he runs a 4.38, he's going to go at 15. So whatever, just it all depends.
No, I agree with you, and again, that's why we do this so far out. We're just kind of getting a feel for where things are. But if you've wanted to see where different guys fall, this is the range that we're talking about here. Both my picks and Ryan Kerr's picks. Again, congratulations to Ryan Kerr for winning Mock Draft Monday. And if you didn't win, don't worry. We're doing a lot of these every Monday leading up to the NFL draft. So keep submitting them on Facebook and Twitter. We'll get to them and get them in there. Get them on the screen as much as we can. But the drafts, both of those drafts were guys that I think you and I can agree, Alan, Christian Gonzalez, Paris Johnson Jr. Those are guys that if they're there at 17, I don't care unless you call with the ransom. Like if you call with the bag, like first, second, third round picks and something ridiculous, then I'd be like, then I'd be like, okay, I'm willing to listen. But those are guys that I'm like, I'm not making the calls. I'm saying I'm getting that guy, adding him to my team, and we're going to be a lot better next year because of him.
I think those are 2 of the best possible outcomes for the Steelers at 17.
That's going to be very interesting to see if that is what plays out. We'll go have a lot of other scenarios to consider as time moves on with the Steelers. There's going to be a lot to do here, and we'll have a lot more mock draft Mondays where we can do things. We're going to get some mock drafts from Alan at some point here on this show. It's going to be a fun time. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work
at @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, Instagram, other social medias. At SteelersNow.com, all the Steelers stuff. We got all kinds of pre-draft content rolling, and looking forward to Combine here in a couple weeks. Had a blast at the Senior Bowl, and we'll keep going.
I hear that. They do great coverage there at SteelersNow.com. Go check them out. SteelersNow.com and everything that Alan Saunders, Nick Faribault, and our guys over there do. I'm Chris Carter, host of Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find the show Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting platform, especially on YouTube. Like this video if you saw it on YouTube. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. If you want to help out the show even further, go on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment. Do both at the same time. I get you a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again to everybody on. Congratulations to Ryan Kerr again for winning Mock Draft Monday. Back tomorrow with another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We'll see you then.